Awesome. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Testing, testing. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Please let me know if the audio is not working. Presumably you would know that by, I don't know, not being able to hear me, I guess. That doesn't really work very well, does it? But let's switch over to the video. All right. Hi, everybody. Ben here. Just doing a quick little kind of test of the cameras, the microphones, etc. for kind of in preparation for the Ravnica RPG that we're going to be starting on Sunday. We're going to be playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, my favorite edition so far, and I've played all the way since 2nd edition. So, you know, I've got enough experience under my belt to be able to make that claim in an informed fashion. But 5th edition's really cool, like it a lot, and so we're going to be playing that. And as you can see here on my other camera, my little webcam over here, we are going to be using the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. We are, all of us, the people playing, myself, we're all Magic the Gathering fans and Dungeons & Dragons fans. So we're going to be using this book as kind of our main source book. We're also going to be making... pardon me. We're also going to be making use of the really awesome Plane Shift, like free PDF downloads that were made available by Wizards of the Coast in the last couple of years. I don't know the exact release dates on those, but there's one for those of you who are familiar with Magic the Gathering. There's one for Zendikar. There's one for I've totally lost my train of I've totally lost the names of them. Amonkhet, which is my personal favorite. That one's really cool. There's one for Innistrad. There's one for Dominaria. There's one for the one that starts with a K. The name eludes me at the moment. But we're going to be using all those because, let's be honest, it's a Magic the Gathering game, so we should be visiting different planes. Otherwise, you know, if you're not playing a Planeswalker, not what's the point, but you're missing out on an opportunity at the very least. Speaking of the Planeswalker, you can see here that I've got a window up showing off the Planeswalker class. This is a homebrew thing that I put together with, as you can see at the top of the class, it was with a few borrowed concepts from a user by the name of Asmodeus11, and there's a link at the top of it that you can check out. If anybody's interested in actually getting access to the Google Doc, so you can give it a try, give it a play test, give me feedback, that'd be awesome. Just shoot me a message in the chat. I'd be happy to give it to you. But we have 3 players. We've got the Ravensdale Publishing resident artist. He's our lead visual design guy, Samson. Been playing Magic forever. We've also got Sophia and Andrew, a couple friends of mine from the cosplay community, who are also big Magic fans, and they also are D&D players. So it kind of was just perfect that this book came out, and we're all kind of interested and willing to play through it live for your viewing pleasure. But let's talk about the Planeswalker class just briefly. I'm going to do a larger kind of in-depth explanation of it probably mid next week. But let's just take a quick glance, shall we? So it is basically a caster / melee fighter class, kind of depending on how you build it out. So kind of similar to warlocks and bards and clerics and stuff like that. They can focus on spell casting, they can focus on, you know, more melee or combat stuff, or they could do a kind of a mix of the two. So as a result, a D8 hit points kind of made D8 hit die made the most sense for these guys. Basic light armor proficiency and weapon proficiencies. They get 1 saving throw as base class, but depending on which mana affinity they choose, we'll talk about that in a minute, they get a 2nd saving throw proficiency, and they get some additional armor and weapon proficiencies as well, and tool proficiencies. Starting equipment, pretty basic stuff for a, you know, lightly armored caster type, with the exception of the weapons they choose might be martial, they might get a shield, again, depending on their additional proficiencies. So we're going to skip some of this stuff and jump into the actual spell, like the class features table. So I built it out, levels 1 through 20. And basically the idea here is there were a couple of design philosophies I wanted to stick with. The first one being I wanted cantrips to be kind of a core element of the Planeswalkers. When you're playing Magic the Gathering, everything you're doing is casting spells. So I wanted to make casting cantrips always a viable or kind of worthwhile option for this class. So it's got a few features that are related to cantrips, specifically as you get up into higher levels. You can cast multiple cantrips at the same time by spending a little extra mana. There are some other ones where you can, cast cantrips a little bit faster and things like that. So it's kind of focused on stuff like that. Let's see. So spell casting for the class, different from wizards and sorcerers and everybody like that, pretty much entirely. Anybody who's familiar with psionics in previous editions, this has a few similarities to that, where instead of getting psionic points, you get mana, just like in the card game. And you basically have a limit of daily mana that you basically start the day with. So when you wake up, it's kind of like your spell slots that you wake up with. So you start your day with a certain amount of mana, and then you can have a certain amount of max mana, and that's going to change as you level up. And then you can do something called harness mana once you hit 3rd level. So you'll notice that the daily mana and the max mana are the same for levels 1 and 2. Once you hit level 3, the max mana starts to kind of pull away from the daily mana table. The idea here is that once you get to be a stronger planeswalker, you're able to kind of harness mana on the fly. So you start every morning with some mana kind of in your pocket, ready to go to cast spells, and then during the day, if you get into a fight, you can always pull out, basically you take an action to pull a little bit of extra mana out of the ether and use it to cast a spell. And depending on what your mana proficiency is, or your mana affinity, could be a bonus action to harness that mana if you're in a terrain type that is relevant to your mana affinity. So if you're a black mana caster and you are in a graveyard, then when you go to harness mana, you can actually do it as a bonus action. But there's a limited number of times you can do it, so there's a trade-off. Let's see. So let me kind of pop back up here and talk about mana affinity a little bit. So like I said, at first level, you're going to choose an affinity for one of the 5 colors of mana, and whatever you select is going to determine the spells you can choose, as well as some of your class features, like your bonus proficiencies, things like that. You get additional affinities as you level up. You could focus on one type of mana, so by the time you hit level 20, you could have level 5 affinity in black mana, or you could have, like a lot of Magic the Gathering players have, they could have a dual color or a tricolor deck of spells by having different affinities for mana. So you won't get some of the stronger abilities if you split out, but you'll get a wider range of abilities, a wider range of spells. So it's kind of a trade-off. So we're going to scroll down past this. And we're going to take a look at some of the kind of mana affinities really quickly. So we've got black, blue, green, red, white, the 5 mana colors from Magic. And they're going to have different armor proficiencies. So for black affinity, you don't get any extra armor proficiencies, but you do get you do get the sickle and shields, or you can choose the glaive. So if you want kind of a big Grim Reaper type scythe, you can take proficiency in glaive, and it kind of gives you a similar feel. Or you could be, more of a, not defensive, but a slightly more well-defended black mana caster, and you could go with sickle and shield, so you've got that additional bonus to your AC. They get Thieves' Tools or Poisoner's Kits as their toolkits because, black in the Magic kind of lore, people who are who have an affinity with black magic tend to be kind of underhanded, like assassins, rogues, thieves, things like that. You see a lot of those types of cards in the black mana, or in the black sets that are out there. So I kind of decided to stick with that theme and give them Thieves or Poisoner's Tools to reflect it. Saving throw, they get Constitution because they deal with a lot of undead and poisons and stuff like that, so they have to be fairly tough in order to withstand that. And the spellcasting ability is going to be dependent on your mana affinity as well. So when you choose your mana affinity at first level, that's your spellcasting ability. And I went back and forth on whether or not if you choose affinities for the other mana types, your spellcasting ability should be dependent on the mana type in question. I forget what I finally decided on, but we'll talk about that when we go into the in-depth kind of run through a little bit later. So blue gets shields kind of by default. They get the Morningstar or Flail for their weapons. Tools, the Forgery Kit or Disguise Kit. Blue is all about kind of misdirection and a lot of shape-shifting, illusions, things like that. So those two toolkits made sense to me. Saving throw is obviously intelligence. It just makes the most sense. Blue casters tend to be, maybe a little bit too much, but they tend to be focused on book learning and intelligence and things like that. So there we go. For green, you actually get medium armor proficiency because a lot of characters that kind of represent green mana in the lore, again, tend to be like kind of big burly warrior, ranger types, so it kind of fits. Weapons, they get one ranged or thrown weapon and one simple weapon of their choice, plus the ones that all planeswalkers get. Tools, they get the woodcarver's or navigator's tool that again represent kind of either making your own arrows or whatever the case may be for woodcarvers, or navigators being able to explore around. Wisdom, obviously, is the saving throw and spellcasting ability for these guys, just like druids or rangers. Red gets medium armor proficiency, and they get one two-handed martial melee weapon as an additional weapon proficiency. Smith's tools or climbers kits because red mana comes from mountains, so of course they're going to be adept at climbing the mountains and things like that. Smith's tools because a lot of cards in red sets in the past have reflected like people smithing weapons or kind of have that general vibe, so I went with that. Saving throw here is strength. Spellcasting ability is strength. Kind of makes the red the melee heavy version of a planeswalker. So if you want to like be getting up in the thick of the fight, red mana is probably the affinity you want to pick. And then of course white. This is white cards in the game are usually about summoning a lot of creatures, usually kind of representing like a town militia or a city guard or a well-trained army, commanders, things like that. So again, very martial heavy, medium armor and shields, long sword, short sword or spear as additional proficiencies, and the healers and herbalism kits to represent kind of the white focus on healing and curing illnesses and things like that. And then of course saving throw is charisma there, kind of like paladins in particular. So anyways, there's a lot of talk to say planeswalkers. I'm trying to make it a workable class because I think it'll add a lot of fun, and I think it sticks with the theme of Ravnica and whatnot. I know not everybody on Ravnica, very few people on Ravnica are planeswalkers, but I figure if you're going to play a Magic the Gathering themed D&D game, playing a planeswalker would be a cool opportunity. So we'll try it out. We'll see how it works. But if you want to kind of get more of a look at this, at the Ravnica game and everything like that, coming up this Sunday, January 27th, 1 p.m. Pacific time, we are going to be doing our character creation session. So it's going to be me, Sophia, Andrew, and Samson sitting down, rolling up their characters, and we hope you'll tune in, check it out, and join us for the remainder of the campaign. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks for tuning into our little promo, our little technology test here. I didn't hear any or see anybody complain that you couldn't hear me, so hopefully it was working. Shrug, fingers crossed. It seems like everything's working fine. We've got the multi... Pardon me a moment. We've got the multi-camera setup working pretty well here. Obviously, the way it's laid out, or the way the stream window is laid out, will be a little bit different when we've got me and the players, but yeah, this was just to test the technology connections all worked and whatnot. Sorry, little cough. But yeah, it looks like everything's working. Thanks again for tuning in, and we hope to see you on Sunday for the kickoff, the official kickoff. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.